The wind howled like a wounded beast, tearing through the coastal town with merciless force. Trees bent at unnatural angles, their roots straining against the earth as rain lashed against rooftops like 1,000 tiny fists. Streets once bustling with life were now flooded, cars half submerged in rising waters. Among the chaos, a small, scrappy tabby cat named Milo clung to the branch of a toppled tree, his fur drenched, his tiny body trembling with fear. Milo had been alone for as long as he could remember, surviving off scraps and avoiding danger at every turn. But he had never faced something like this. The sky raged above him, flashes of lightning illuminating the devastation below. His sharp claws dug into the bark, but the water was rising, fast. His green eyes darted around, searching for safety, but all he could see was destruction. Then, through the torrential downpour, a deep, desperate bark rang out. Max, a large golden retriever, was wading through the floodwaters, his eyes wide with urgency. He had once had a home, a warm bed, a loving owner, but the storm had taken everything. Now, like Milo, he was alone. But Max wasn't just looking for shelter, he was searching for something, someone. His ears perked up at the faint cry above him. He spotted Milo clinging to the tree, his tiny frame barely visible in the storm's fury. Without hesitation, Max surged forward, the water nearly swallowing him whole. He paddled with all his strength, reaching the base of the tree just as a powerful gust shook it violently. Milo's grip faltered. His claws slipped. With a startled yowl, he plunged into the icy flood below. Max lunged, his powerful jaws snapping forward just in time, catching the scruff of Milo's neck before the water could pull him under. The kitten dangled from Max's mouth, shivering and terrified, but safe. With a determined push, Max fought against the current, swimming toward a nearby piece of floating debris, an old wooden door, half broken but sturdy enough to hold them. He scrambled onto it, carefully setting Milo down between his paws. The kitten coughed and sputtered, his small body shaking, but he was alive. Max curled around him, shielding him from the biting wind. The storm roared on, relentless, but together, they held on, two souls, once lost, now found in each other. As the night wore on and the hurricane raged, their bond was sealed not by choice, but by survival. They didn't know what lay ahead, but one thing was certain, they would face it together. The storm had passed, but its fury had left behind a world unrecognizable. The once lively streets were buried beneath fallen trees and debris. Houses stood broken, their roofs ripped away as if by giant hands. The scent of wet wood and seawater clung to the air, mixing with the distant sound of sirens and desperate voices calling out for loved ones. Max and Milo lay curled up together on the wooden door that had saved them. The golden retriever stirred first, his muscles aching from the fight against the raging waters. His fur was still damp, clinging to his body in heavy clumps, but he ignored the discomfort. His eyes darted around, scanning the surroundings. The floodwaters had receded slightly, revealing patches of muddy ground and shattered remains of homes. Milo, the small tabby kitten, let out a weak meow as he slowly lifted his head. He was exhausted, his tiny body fragile from the ordeal. His fur was a mess, tangled and coated in dried mud. But when he looked up at Max, something unspoken passed between them, a silent promise that they would not part. Max nudged Milo gently with his nose, encouraging him to move. They couldn't stay here. The storm had taken everything, and now they had to find food, shelter, and safety. Carefully, Max stepped off the wooden door, his paws sinking into the cold, wet ground. He turned back and lowered his head, allowing Milo to climb onto his back. The kitten hesitated for only a moment before clambering up, settling between Max's shoulder blades. Together, they ventured into the wreckage of their world. The streets were eerily quiet, save for the distant hum of rescue workers in boats and the occasional crack of unstable debris collapsing. Max's ears twitched at every sound, his body tense as he moved cautiously. He didn't know where they were going, but his instincts told him to keep moving. They weaved through the remains of broken houses, stepping over shattered glass and overturned furniture. At one point, Max spotted an abandoned grocery store with its windows blown out. He padded inside, his nose twitching as he searched for anything edible. Amid the chaos, he found a half-torn bag of kibble that had spilled onto the wet floor. He lapped up what he could, pushing a few pieces toward Milo, who hungrily nibbled at them. Just as they finished their small meal, a sudden noise made Max's ears perk up. Footsteps. Voices. Humans. Max's heart pounded. Would they be kind? Would they take him and Milo to safety? Or would they chase them away? Milo pressed against Max's neck, sensing his hesitation. Together, they turned toward the source of the sound, bracing for whatever came next. They had survived the storm. Now they had to survive what came after. Max stood frozen, his ears perked up, his muscles tense. The voices were getting closer, accompanied by the crunch of boots against the wreckage. Milo, still nestled between Max's shoulders, let out a small, uncertain meow. He was terrified, but something about Max's presence made him feel safe. Through the misty remains of the storm, two figures emerged, rescue workers dressed in bright orange jackets, their faces tired but determined. One was a woman with short brown hair, her eyes scanning the wreckage carefully. The other, a man with a beard, carried a flashlight, carefully stepping over fallen debris. "Over here," the man called. "There's movement." Max's tail stiffened. Every instinct told him to run. He had seen too many humans ignore or mistreat dogs like him, and now, with Milo depending on him, he couldn't afford to take chances. But before he could turn to flee, Milo did something unexpected. He jumped down from Max's back and limped toward the rescuers. The small kitten, still weak, let out a fragile meow as he approached them. His tiny paws left wet imprints on the muddy ground. The woman gasped softly, crouching down. "Oh my goodness," she whispered, reaching a gloved hand toward the kitten. "You poor thing." Max's heart pounded. Milo was exposing himself, trusting the humans. Max wanted to bark, to pull him back, but then, something changed. The woman took off her glove, carefully scooping Milo into her hands. Instead of fear, Milo curled into her warmth, purring weakly. Then she looked up and saw Max. Her expression softened. "And you must be his protector," she said gently. Max took a hesitant step forward. He could smell something kind in her scent. No cruelty, no anger, just warmth. The man knelt beside her. "They must have stuck together through the storm," he said. "That's incredible." Max looked at Milo, then back at the rescuers. His body remained tense, but deep inside he knew they weren't here to hurt him. They were here to help. The woman slowly reached out a hand, palm up, letting Max make the choice. He hesitated for only a moment before stepping forward, pressing his cold nose against her skin. A relieved smile spread across her face. "Let's get them to safety." Carefully, she lifted Milo, wrapping him in a dry towel from her pack. The man pulled out a leash, looping it loosely around Max's neck, not as a restraint, but as a promise of safety. As they walked toward the rescue van, Max looked up at the gray sky, the storm finally behind them. He and Milo had made it, and for the first time in a long while, they weren't alone. Max lay on a soft blanket, warmth surrounding him for the first time in what felt like forever. The shelter was quiet except for the occasional bark or meow from the other animals. The scent of fresh food, clean floors, and something unfamiliar, hope, filled the air. Across from him, Milo curled up in a small bed, his tiny chest rising and falling with peaceful breaths. It had been days since the storm, and yet, its memory still haunted them both. But here, in this place full of kind voices and gentle hands, the weight of their past was slowly lifting. The woman who had rescued them, now known to them as Emily, walked in, holding 2 bowls of food. "Look at you two," she said with a soft smile. "You're already inseparable." Max's tail thumped against the floor as she placed a bowl in front of him. Milo stretched, letting out a small yawn before padding over to his own food. Their bellies were full, their bodies healing, but something was missing. A home. Later that day, as visitors walked through the shelter, looking for pets to adopt, Max watched them cautiously. Some stopped to admire him, others cooed at Milo, but none felt right. Until one family entered. A woman, a young boy, and an elderly man with warm, kind eyes. The boy gasped when he saw Milo. "Mom, look at the kitten," he cried, rushing over. Milo, surprisingly, didn't shy away. Instead, he sniffed the boy's outstretched fingers before rubbing his head against them. The woman knelt beside him, glancing at Max. "And this handsome guy?" she asked Emily. Emily's smile grew. They survived a hurricane together. They saved each other. The elderly man stepped forward, kneeling beside Max. "A protector," he murmured, scratching behind Max's ears. "And a loyal one at that." Max held his breath. Was this it? Was this where they belonged? The woman turned to Emily, her eyes soft. "They've been through so much. They shouldn't have to be apart." Emily's face lit up. "Are you saying?" The boy beamed. "We want them both." Milo let out a happy little chirp, and Max, for the first time in a long while, felt truly safe. As they were led outside, the storm that had nearly taken everything from them felt like a distant memory. The sky was clear, the sun warm on their fur. Milo rested on the boy's shoulder, and Max walked proudly beside the elderly man, his heart lighter than ever. They weren't just survivors. They were family.